Dear viewers, the following stories are inspired by real events. However, the names of the characters have been changed to protect privacy. True horror story. A girl coming home late at night. In the winter of 2018, in a quiet small town in Pennsylvania, there was a deserted road called Route 366, where tall trees cast shadows over the damp asphalt. Sarah, the character's name has been changed, a night shift nurse at the local hospital, had just finished her tiring shift. The clock on her old car read exactly 2:17 a.m. It was freezing cold, and small snowflakes began to fall lightly, covering the surroundings with a thin layer. She turned on the heater in her car, trying to ward off the cold and the weariness that enveloped her. The dim yellow streetlights shone into the car, illuminating Sarah's somewhat tired face. She had just experienced a stressful shift, witnessing pain and loss. Now, she just wanted to get home quickly, lie down on her warm bed, and forget everything. Sarah's drive home was usually very quiet at this hour, with only the sound of the car engine and the light whistling of the wind through the dry branches. But tonight, she felt a difference, an indescribable feeling of unease creeping into her mind. As Sarah's car passed a deserted curve, she suddenly glanced in the rearview mirror. In the dim light, she briefly saw a black car, make unknown, following her at a considerable distance. She frowned, wondering who would be on this road at this hour. Maybe it was also someone coming home late from work, or just a coincidence. She tried not to think too much, focusing on driving, but the further she drove, the black car behind her got closer. Sarah began to feel worried. She sped up a little, but the other car seemed to speed up as well. She looked in the rearview mirror again, this time more clearly. The black car didn't have its headlights on. Only the faint moonlight illuminated it, creating a terrifying dark shadow. Sarah felt her heart beat faster. This was no longer a coincidence. Fear began to invade Sarah's mind. She wondered if she was being followed. Who would want to follow a night shift nurse like her? She tried to stay calm, thinking that perhaps she was imagining things. But the feeling of unease did not disappear. Instead, it became more pronounced. She glanced quickly at both sides of the road, trying to find a house with lights on where she could stop for help. But all around were only trees and darkness. As Sarah's car drove through a section of road with no streetlights, darkness enveloped everything. At this moment, the black car behind her suddenly accelerated, pulling up alongside her car. Sarah startled, quickly looking over. She couldn't see the person inside the car clearly. Only a shadowy figure in the driver's seat, seemingly staring at her. A cold sensation ran down Sarah's spine. In that terrifying moment, the black car suddenly swerved into Sarah's car, causing her car to shake violently. Sarah struggled to maintain control of the steering wheel, but the car was still pushed to the side, almost veering off the road. She screamed in terror, trying to slam on the brakes. Her car stopped abruptly, the tires skidding on the icy road. The black car also stopped right in front of her car, blocking the road. The door of the black car swung open, and a tall, shadowy figure stepped out. He wore a long black coat that covered his entire body and a slouchy beanie that obscured his face. In the darkness, Sarah couldn't see the features of his face clearly, but she could feel a terrible threat emanating from him. He slowly approached Sarah's car, his footsteps heavy on the snow. Sarah locked the car doors, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew she was in danger. Sarah tried to stay calm, even though she was terrified inside. She looked around the car, searching for anything she could use as a weapon for self-defense. In the glove compartment on the passenger side, she found a small flashlight and an old wrench. She gripped the wrench tightly in her hand, ready for the worst-case scenario. The stranger had reached her car. He stopped beside the driver's side window. Leaning down to look inside, Sarah could feel his cold gaze through the car window. Although she couldn't see his face clearly, she knew he was looking at her, assessing her. A terrifying silence enveloped the space, with only the light whistling of the wind in Sarah's pounding heart. Suddenly, the stranger raised his hand and banged hard on the car window. The loud noise startled Sarah, and she let out a small scream. He continued to bang on the window, each bang more violent than the last. Sarah knew that the glass wouldn't hold for much longer. She had to do something. Had to get out of here. She quickly came up with a plan. She would start the car and try to reverse, then drive around his car to escape. She quickly inserted the key into the ignition and turned it hard. The car vibrated slightly, and the engine started. Sarah quickly shifted the gear lever into reverse and pressed the gas pedal hard. The car jerked backward, but the tires slipped on the thin layer of ice. She tried to steer, but the car still didn't move as she wanted. The stranger realized her intention. He quickly ran to the back of the car, trying to prevent her from reversing. Sarah saw him in the rearview mirror. He was trying to hold onto the back of the car. With no other choice, Sarah shifted the gear lever into drive and pressed the gas pedal hard. The car lunged forward, crashing into the black car blocking the road. A loud collision echoed, and both cars shook violently. Sarah felt her head hit the steering wheel hard, a sharp pain spreading. She tried to stay conscious. Looking ahead, the black car was pushed to the side, creating enough space for her to drive through. Sarah didn't hesitate for a second. She pressed the gas pedal hard, drove around the damaged car, and sped away at high speed. She looked in the rearview mirror, seeing the stranger standing in the middle of the road, watching her car. He wasn't chasing her, but his eyes were full of anger and hatred. Sarah knew this wasn't over. She drove as fast as she could, trying to escape this terrifying deserted road. Tears streamed down her face, partly from fear, partly from pain. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to run as far as possible from that stranger. Finally, she saw the lights of a gas station ahead. She breathed a sigh of relief. Quickly turning in, Sarah stopped her car right in front of the gas station, jumped out, and ran quickly inside. She saw an employee sitting behind the counter, a middle-aged man with a kind face. Sarah ran to him, her voice broken with fear. "Please, help me. Someone is chasing me." The gas station employee looked at Sarah with concern, asking, "What's wrong, ma'am? What happened?" Sarah tried to recount what had just happened, her voice trembling and tearful. The gas station employee listened, then reassured her and called the police. Sarah felt safer with someone helping her, but fear still haunted her. While waiting for the police to arrive, Sarah was invited by the gas station employee to sit down and have a hot cup of coffee. She was still shaking, unable to believe what had just happened. Why would someone want to chase and harm her? She didn't know anyone who would act so strangely. The police arrived about 15 minutes later. 2 officers came in, and they listened carefully as Sarah recounted the entire story. After listening, the officers reassured Sarah and said they would conduct an investigation. They asked her about the black car and the stranger, but Sarah couldn't provide many details because it was too dark and everything happened so quickly. They inspected Sarah's car, Noting the damage from the collision, one officer said, "We'll patrol this area more carefully. Do you remember his license plate number?" Sarah shook her head. She was too scared to pay attention to the license plate. The officers advised Sarah to go to the hospital for a checkup. But she refused. She just wanted to get home quickly and rest. They agreed to drive her all the way home and promised to contact her if they had any new information. Sarah was grateful for their help. But when the police car left and she stood alone in front of her house, fear rushed back. She opened the door and stepped into the house. It was still quiet and deserted as always. But tonight, that silence made her feel uneasy. She turned on all the lights in the house, carefully checked all the doors and windows, making sure everything was securely locked. She went upstairs to her bedroom, but couldn't fall asleep. The image of the black car and the shadowy figure haunted her mind. The next morning, Sarah still felt tired and anxious. She decided not to go to work and stayed home to rest. She called the hospital manager to request a leave of absence. Afterward, she went outside to check her car. She saw that the front of the car was quite badly damaged. The headlights were broken, and the hood was dented. She sighed, knowing that the repairs would cost a lot of money and time. While examining the damage, Sarah suddenly noticed a strange object lying under the car. She bent down to look closer and saw that it was a black leather wallet. She picked up the wallet and opened it. She found some cash, a few credit cards, and a driver's license. Sarah startled when she looked at the photo on the license. The face of the man in the photo was the same person who had chased her the night before. The name on the license was David Miller, and the address was listed as a town not far away. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She had seen the face of the person who had tried to harm her. She quickly called the police, providing information about the wallet and the driver's license she had found. The police seemed very interested in this information and promised to investigate quickly. In the following days, Sarah lived in anxiety and fear. She always felt like someone was watching her. She was more careful when going out, always looking around. She installed an alarm system for her house and asked a close friend to stay with her for a few nights to feel safer. The police had conducted an investigation into David Miller, but they couldn't find him at the registered address. It seemed he had disappeared without a trace. A week later, Sarah received a call from the police. They informed her that they had found the black car she had described, abandoned in a remote area near David Miller's town. Inside the car, they found some of his personal belongings, but there was no trace of where he was. The case remained a mystery, and Sarah still lived in fear that the stranger might return at any time. Although the police had increased patrols and promised to protect Sarah, she still couldn't feel at ease. The feeling of being watched always haunted her, even inside her own home. She often woke up suddenly at night, feeling like someone was watching her from the darkness. Small noises in the house also frightened her. She always thought that the stranger had sneaked inside. One night, while sleeping soundly, Sarah suddenly woke up to a strange noise coming from downstairs. It was the sound of very light footsteps. But in the silence of the late night, it became extremely clear. Sarah's heart pounded, and she tried to listen carefully. The footsteps moved slowly from the living room up the stairs, getting closer and closer to her bedroom. Sarah lay still in bed, her breathing becoming rapid. She was so scared that she didn't dare move. The footsteps stopped right outside her bedroom door. Sarah could hear someone's faint breathing on the other side of the door. She closed her eyes tightly, praying for everything to be okay. Suddenly, the doorknob turned slightly, Sarah screamed in terror, jumped out of bed, and backed against the wall. The door slowly opened, and a tall, dark figure stood in the doorway. In the dim darkness, Sarah couldn't see the person's face clearly, but she recognized the familiar figure. It was David Miller, the one who had chased her on the road that night. He stood there, silently looking at her, his eyes cold and terrifying. Sarah tried to scream for help, but her throat constricted, and she couldn't make a sound. David Miller slowly stepped into the room. He didn't say anything, just stared at Sarah. She felt like she was frozen in place, unable to move. Utter fear enveloped her. Suddenly, he raised his hand, holding a shiny knife. Sarah closed her eyes, waiting for the worst to happen. But then, nothing happened. Sarah slowly opened her eyes. David Miller was still standing there, the knife still in his hand, but he didn't move closer to her. He just stood there, looking at her strangely, as if he was having a fierce internal struggle. After a terrifying moment of silence, he slightly shook his head, turned his back, and walked out of the room. Sarah heard his footsteps going down the stairs and then disappearing. Sarah rushed out of the bedroom and ran downstairs. She checked the whole house, but David Miller was nowhere to be found. The doors and windows were still locked. How could he have gotten into her house? She clearly remembered locking the doors carefully before going to bed. A chilling sensation ran down Sarah's spine. Perhaps he had been hiding somewhere in the house all along? Sarah called the police, her voice full of panic. She recounted what had just happened, but the officers seemed skeptical. They said it was possible she had just had a nightmare. But Sarah knew what she had seen was real. She could never forget David Miller's cold eyes. She felt unsafe even in her own home. In the following nights, Sarah was constantly tormented by nightmares. She dreamed of David Miller appearing in the darkness, with the shiny knife in his hand. She didn't dare sleep alone, always having to leave the lights on and constantly checking the doors and windows. She felt like she was trapped in an endless nightmare. One evening, while sitting and watching TV in the living room, Sarah suddenly heard a soft knock on the door. She startled, her heart pounding. She didn't dare open the door, afraid it was David Miller again. The knocking repeated, each time more urgent. Finally, Sarah mustered all her courage and peeked through the peephole. She saw a woman standing outside. It was a neighbor she knew. Sarah opened the door, and the neighbor asked worriedly, "Sarah, are you okay? I heard strange noises coming from your house last night. I was worried, so I came over to check on you today." Sarah recounted what had happened, and the neighbor was terrified after hearing it. She advised Sarah to move somewhere else because David Miller was clearly still out there somewhere and could come back at any time. The neighbor's advice made Sarah think. She knew she couldn't continue living in this fear forever. She decided she would move, starting a new life in a safer place. But before leaving, she wanted to know why David Miller had targeted her, why he wanted to harm her. She felt she needed to find out the truth. Sarah decided to investigate David Miller herself. She searched for information about him online, but there wasn't much. She only knew that he used to live in a nearby town and had a prior record for assault. Sarah went to the town where David Miller used to live, hoping to find some clues. She asked the local residents, but no one clearly remembered him. Finally, Sarah went to an old bar on the outskirts of town, where she had heard David Miller used to frequent. She walked into the bar. The atmosphere inside was dim and gloomy. She sat down at the bar and asked the bartender about David Miller. The bartender, an older man with a weathered face, looked at Sarah with a scrutinizing gaze. After listening to Sarah recount what had happened, the bartender sighed and said, "David Miller, a troubled man. He has a dark past. A few years ago, he was suspected of being involved in the disappearance of a young girl in this town. But the police didn't have enough evidence to charge him." Sarah felt a jolt of electricity run down her spine. The disappearance of the young girl. Could it be that David Miller was behind it all? She asked the bartender for more information, and he told her about the terrifying rumors surrounding David Miller. People said that he had a strange obsession with women who worked night shifts, especially nurses. Sarah was horrified to realize that she could have been his next victim. She felt danger lurking everywhere. She decided she had to report this information to the police. She quickly left the bar and called the officers investigating her case. When Sarah told the police about what she had learned, they were very surprised. They promised to reinvestigate the old disappearance case and look into the connection with David Miller. A few days later, Sarah received news that shocked her. The police had found the body of the missing young girl in a forest near David Miller's house. Evidence showed that the girl had been brutally murdered. The police issued a nationwide warrant for David Miller's arrest. After several weeks of searching, they finally caught him trying to cross the border into Canada. David Miller was brought to trial and convicted of murder. He was sentenced to life in prison. Although justice had been served, what Sarah had experienced still left a deep scar in her mind. She never forgot the terrifying night on the deserted road and the frightening figure of David Miller. She moved to another city, trying to start a new life. But fear always lingered in her heart. She always felt like someone was watching her in the dark. Sarah's story is a warning about the dangers that can lurk around us at any time. Even on familiar roads, always be vigilant and trust your instincts. If you enjoy listening to true horror stories like this, please hit the subscribe button on the channel so you don't miss the next videos. Thank you for listening.